Hello, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're located. Thank you so much for joining us today for a hacker's guide to VIP security with Rachel Tobac, who is the CEO of Social Proof Security. My name is Emma and I'm a Bitwarden team member, and I'm super excited to host this discussion today. With that, huge welcome to Rachel Tobac. She is a hacker and, as I mentioned, the CEO of Social Proof Security. Some of her amazing accolades include being a second place winner of the DEF CON's Wild Spectator Sport, the Social Engineering Capture the Flag contest for an amazing 3 years in a row. I'm looking forward to hear winning year number 4, Rachel, so keep us updated on that. You may have seen her or heard her on NPR Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, the New York Times, CNN, NBC, Nightly News with Lester Holt, and honestly, many more. So she is also the chair of the board of the nonprofit Women's Security Privacy Organization. So Rachel, huge thank you for today and joining us. And with that said, I'd love for you to take us away. Tell us, how did you get into hacking people for a living, and why do you do it?
Yeah. So my first ever hack happened in front of a live audience at DEF CON, 500 people. I was sweating. And I had to call a real company target over the phone in 20 minutes and get as many flags or pieces of sensitive information. Sensitive is in quotes because it's not super sensitive at DEF CON, but that's what happened. The world's largest hacker conference. And I did that 3 years in a row. I got second place 3 years in a row, which I'll take it. It's good enough for me. And from there, people started asking me, hey, can you train my team or explain to us how you did that or help us avoid that same fate, or pen test us, which is, when they ask you to hack them. And we really just started from there. So in 2017, it just became obvious, like, I guess we need to LLC. People seem to want us to do this. And yeah, the rest is history.
Wow, that's quite a beginning. Love that origin story for you. So you have hacked many people, and
Yeah.
I think that's great. I'd love to hear what was one of your most successful hacks of an executive, and what could have been done to prevent your successful hacking?
Sure. Yeah, this is all about VIPs and executives today. I'm sure we'll talk about folks with lower threat models, but you might have seen some of my Dhoni hacks that I've done. Dhoni's a high-profile individual. He works as a CNN correspondent. He has millions upon millions of eyeballs every single day. I hacked him right in front of him. There's videos online if you want to watch. I've hacked him twice now. So I've stolen 7 passwords in 30 seconds from him. I've also stole his airline miles, his hotel miles, his coffee points. They actually didn't make it into the final cut because we were not able to revert that, which was extremely sad. He had to fly home in the middle seat. Weren't able to revert that either. So that's a pretty high profile hack that you can actually go watch. But I want to tell you about one that I can't tell you all the details of because it's under NDA, but I think it's really important for people to know. So people often want me to hack their executive team. And they come in and they say, our executives, they feel like they are invincible. They think they know everything about this. They've heard about phishing a million times. They really don't want to hear us talk about this anymore. So we have hired you to do that. And oftentimes when I'm brought in to do that, I impersonate a board member or another executive to the executives. We always get permission before we impersonate someone, especially if they're, VIP, high profile. Like, that's really essential. You don't want to damage someone's brand. So we get the permission, and then we go ahead and we ask for a deck, or we say we're on a plane and, hey, can you send me the financials? I just need to make sure I look over them before we get into XYZ. And this works like a lot. And so there are a lot of things that you can do to make it more obnoxious for me as a hacker. So previously, people would just share me on decks and they would just send it to me via email when I asked for it. If you provision me access and you focus on access that can be given out through like a box link or Dropbox or something, and you can revoke that access. Well, now I have to log in through my work portal. I don't have that because I'm the attacker. I'm not the actual exec, right? Or the board member. Or you can remove that as soon as you've noticed that something's gone wrong. Now, of course, we can still exfiltrate if we get it immediately, or if we have creds to gain access. But we don't always. Sometimes we're just fishing for those pieces of information, and we hope that you're going to give them to us just straight up, unencrypted, no need to log in. We can just grab that info. So I kind of want to show you like the sensationalist stuff, like how we hack the VIPs like Tony and the billionaire. But I also want to kind of bring it back down to earth and talk about what attackers are really curious about for your organization and what you can do and what you can consider.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a good reminder that that's why, provisioning a link, like that's why these services and these tools exist. Yeah. Not everything has to be done via email. So what a great reminder. And kind of speaking of how these attacks have evolved over time with, technology and shift in work, how have you seen these types of attack kind of change as we're more of a remote culture, especially for company leadership working in a remote organization?
Sure. We've seen that as organizations have gone to remote work, that's great for employees. It's also great for people who are phishing those employees, because we can more easily impersonate folks if you are not regularly sitting next to them and turning to them and saying, did you send me this? Why did you send me this question? I'm not really involved in this, right? You can kind of tinker and ask questions more naturally. And we know that phishing's always been a problem. It's always probably going to be a problem. But the remote work element really changed the impersonation element of phishing to be able to allow us to convince people that we are someone that we're not. Like, we are IT support, right? If you don't sit near IT support, you've never seen them in the office before, maybe you don't have a relationship with Alex from IT, I can more easily impersonate her and convince you to take some sort of action and download AnyDesk or whatever it is that I need to gain access to your computer.
Yeah, that is great. And I think kind of promoted maybe company meetups or a little more FaceTime with your coworkers. That's a great way to get to know people, to try to avoid some of those pitfalls. And speaking of pitfalls, what are the most common mistakes that people are making that are making them vulnerable to these types of social engineering attacks? And what can we stop doing to give hackers information that they use against us?
Yeah. Well, let's get into the lowest hanging fruit.
Sure.
One of the easiest ways for us to hack is to just find your password online. If you reuse your password, and let's say you use a password for your food delivery service, and you use that same password on your email account at work, your food delivery service is popped, they're hacked, all those the emails and the passwords and all the information about your account is leaked online, including your address probably. You can't control that. As a consumer, you can't choose whether or not you're involved in a breach, right? We don't have that type of control. The attackers can find that password in a data breach repository, something like pastebin, dehashed, and oftentimes we can find them really quickly. Like, I'm talking multiple within a 15-second search. So if I know your email address and the information on your accounts that you typically use, your usernames, et cetera, I can find the passwords that you use. And I fingers crossed as an attacker, that you reuse that password and you don't use a password manager. Now, as a defender, it's completely the opposite. I would hope that you don't reuse that password. And so it kind of renders it not such a big deal if it's leaked. Now, it's a big deal for the account, but hopefully you have multi-factor authentication on that account, so I can't just super easily get in with the password. If you reuse your passwords, if you're sitting here today and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I do fall into that category, I reuse my passwords, maybe I change them, add an exclamation point at the end, I do recommend you go and type into Google, Doni Rachel passwords. You'll find it on YouTube. It's free. Watch how quickly I am able to hack an executive, a VIP, and find 7 of his passwords online, gain access to his accounts, see within his accounts just immediately, because he reused passwords. And 52% of people admit to doing this. Those are just the people who are willing to admit it to Google in a survey in 2019. So probably more people do it than not. So if you fall into that majority and you're concerned, please, please, please use a password manager. Now, maybe you're sitting here and you're thinking, well, Rachel, I'm trying to help my cousin, Ellie, we'll say. Ellie uses the internet once a year, lives off the grid. We're talking lives in a tent, right? It's okay to get Ellie a password notebook. Now, is a password notebook the best match for everybody? Probably not. For me, no. I need to use a password manager that lays on top of my browser, that informs me when I'm going to a site that is a lookalike site, and they're not going to enter my credentials in there. For Ellie, who logs in to an email account once a year to see if anyone's contacted her, probably not necessary. So you got to choose the right match for your threat model. For most people who use the internet regularly, a password manager that lays on top of your browser that you can have on your phone and syncs to your computer is a great match. If you're an individual who is a head of state, let's say you're Joe Biden, right? Maybe you want one that's locally on your machine and that's it. But for most everyday folks, most everybody that has encountered anyone in real life, it makes sense for them to use a password manager that lays on top of their browser.
Yes, I could not agree more. There are very few people that should have sticky note passwords or have a notebook. I visit my grandparents in their retirement community. It's sticky notes everywhere, and that's fine because they never log on anyway. So, for them, that's okay. But for the rest of us that do interact, we absolutely need to be a little more careful. We know that we need a password manager, but kind of overall, what are a few things, what are 3 things that a business could implement that would dramatically increase their security?
Sure. The first thing that you've probably heard me say a million times if you've ever seen me online before is be politely paranoid. That's my fancy way of saying use multiple methods of communication to confirm people are who they say they are. So let's say Emma calls me. Let's say you call me, Emma, and you're like, Rachel, we got to make sure that everything's set up for this event. Really excited. Can you go ahead and send me the deck? And can you make sure that you send me that that internal chat that we were doing? Can you just like export that, send that to me and you're asking for all this stuff, right? And some of it's sensitive because we're talking about internal things. If it's a sensitive action for sensitive data, I'm sending money, you want me to wire something to you, you're asking for credentials, which I'm never going to give you. I'm going to say, Emma, let me see how I can help you. I'm going to be helpful first and foremost, right? Now we're going to do the procedure that we always do. I've Slack messaged you on our internal Slack. Can you go ahead and just respond there? And then we'll talk about that. Or I'm going to give you a call back to thwart spoofing. Use another method of communication to confirm people are who they say they are. You're an executive and a board member calls you, emails you, texts you, signal messages you, and they're like, hey, I need that deck right now. And they've never messaged you before using that method. Just seems a little off maybe. Use that second method of communication. And then from there, I would recommend that you get a password manager. One of the biggest things that I see when I work with my clients is my clients are like, we've got MFA covered. We just upgraded that. Don't yet have a password manager. And I'm like, all right, that's this quarter. Let's make it a priority to get you and your team set up on a password manager, because oftentimes the way that I can get into an organization, executive or not, is I just find the credentials online and I stuff them into your accounts and I get in from there. Or I phish you. Maybe I send you an SMS text and I pretend to be your single sign-on provider saying that you need to upgrade and you need to click here and log in to do that. That's what hit Uber, Cloudflare, Twilio, and I think Reddit recently, that exact pretext and attack method. Twitter was over the phone. The rest of those were over text message or WhatsApp in the case of Uber. And I'm trying to convince you to do this. You got to make sure that you use a password manager, because if you give away your credential, hopefully that credential is not used in multiple places because you have a password manager and you can generate random, unique, and long passwords for every account that you use, store them, and see when it's a legit site to actually enter it. So you've got a lot of ability to control your environment when you know what's legit and what's not, and your password manager can do that for you. And then number 3, it's use the right multi-factor authentication for your threat model. If you're Ellie, my cousin Ellie, you live out in the middle of the woods and you log on to the internet once a year to see if you have any correspondence, do I think a YubiKey is the right match for Ellie? No, I don't. Ellie has 6 worldly possessions and a YubiKey is not going to be one of them. Maybe SMS 2-factor is going to be a match for Ellie. Is it a match for me? No, I have an elevated threat model. I talk online publicly all the time about this stuff. Is it a match for Donny O'Sullivan, who I hacked from CNN? No, he's got to upgrade his MFA model, right? For most everyday folks, we want to use at least app-based MFA to get around the issue of SIM swapping and gaining access to those codes, those 2-factor codes through your text message. Or you want to move towards something like a passkey, or you could use a FIDO security key, something like a YubiKey, if you have admin access at work. We see a lot of issues where we're able to siphon out the multi-factor authentication code from people who get tricked. So if you have admin access, you got a lot of keys to the castle at work. Please work to create a test group where you can use a passkey or YubiKey to log in. Passkeys are going to become more apparent, ubiquitous, and easy to use in the future. Really excited about that. In the next year, you're going to see them everywhere. Right now, hardware security keys are one of the easiest ways to meet that goal.
Awesome. Thank you. Those are 3 great suggestions. I hope everyone at home taking notes, gonna do all of those. But if you maybe feel a little overwhelmed about your securities, what is one thing for someone who, watched this webcast, if they went away and just did one thing to improve their security, what should that thing be? Where should they start?
Yeah, I always tell people, if you're going to take any action, let's say you have a few free hours on a Saturday, you're going to take any action, it's start moving towards using a password manager and not reusing your passwords. Because we know 52% of people, likely more, the majority of people are reusing their passwords. They do that because it's easy to do. If you reuse your password, you add an exclamation point and the word Facebook at the end just because you're on Facebook, that's pretty easy for me to crack as well. So start moving towards a password manager and start with your high value accounts. So your email, which is where I would go to reset all your other accounts. So really high value, your work accounts, your bank accounts, the information about you that's sensitive, maybe your healthcare, and start moving towards a password manager. Avoid reusing your passwords for those accounts. And then over time, you can get to your Neopets, and all those accounts, which Neopets has been pwned like 4 times at this point. So good luck with that. But change your passwords, turn on MFA. If you can do that, you're going to make my life more annoying because the first thing I'm going to try isn't going to work. And I'm going to go, ugh, now I got to do more work. And I'll tell you right now, hackers aren't lazy people, but we want it to be easy. We want to get in there fast. So generate long, random, and unique passwords with your password manager and go from there.
Excellent. That's great. I think we can all empathize with wanting it to be easy. So hackers aren't the only ones that want an easy job. So let's make it harder for them with those suggestions. So thank you for sharing those. So we thank you everyone who submitted questions in the chat. I'm just going to try to get through as much as we can since we're having such a great time here. We got a first question about passwordless. So this reads, with the emerging passwordless mindset, what are the greatest risks and weaknesses in a device-based trust model?
Oh, I love this question. This is really forward thinking because we're about to see passkeys tied to something like iCloud on your iPhone. And so we are really excited about passkeys because it's going to make passwordless really simple for everyday folks. And these are people that are reusing their passwords or they don't have MFA. They're just not prepared, right? Well, one of the issues that we're likely going to see is that attackers are going to change the thing that they're curious about. They're going to want to gain access to your iCloud. They're going to be maybe more interested in your device itself. And so it's important that you secure your device and your identity to that device really well. Secure your iCloud account with a long, random, and unique password and multi-factor authentication, because if your iCloud starts getting attached to your device, and that's now what's used for passwordless within your device and all the tools that you use on it, well, now your iCloud becomes very valuable. Your iCloud's always valuable, really, but it'll become more valuable, especially if you're able to gain access with the device itself or your iCloud, either or. You got to think about the account recovery flows. So you want to make sure you're thinking through, how would I get back into this account if I got out? Now, if I got back into the account just by going into my email address, which isn't secured with a MFA or a good password, well, now you have another weak point, right? You got to think about your account recovery flow for whatever that device is attached to or whatever the iCloud is attached to, if it works in that way for you. So you got to think about the entry points, and it's going to change over time as the devices and the manufacturers start incorporating things in new ways for passkeys.
Well, thank you for that. That's a great explanation of how we can kind of be a little more future thinking with all of these changes. And kind of speaking of emerging technologies, we did get another question. How does AI already represent a new tool for hackers, whether you're using it for text generation or deepfake voice? What does AI have to do for hackers? Are they using it? Are they going to use it? What should we be aware of?
Yes. Well, we know right now that we can make it sound like we're another person pretty easily using an AI tool. So using just a few minutes of video from a person, we can make it sound like we're speaking like them. Coupling that with a spoofed phone call, it's going to seem more believable that we are who we say we are. And so we need to make sure that we use another method of communication on phone calls as well, especially as AI tools get more widely used just by people who are pranking, or they're not just having a good time, they're actually trying to trick you into thinking that you're a cousin and need access to money or something like that. So use a second method of communication for sensitive actions. We are also seeing that AI like ChatGPT is pretty good at writing phishing pretexts. So there's a lot of big headlines. Oh my gosh, ChatGPT or AI can write malware. It can't write malware as good as humans. So you can relax about that for right now. But what we really want to make sure that we're thinking about is how well the attacker can write a phishing email that looks legit. No grammatical errors, great subject verb agreement, right? Things that we're typically looking for. And a lot of times folks that aren't super well versed in InfoSec or hacking, they think, well, if it has no grammar problems, it probably really is from American Airlines or Bank of America. But I could go into ChatGPT and get that to write me a pretext, even if I don't have any experience with pretexting. So I think we're going to see attackers who might normally write kind of a bad email or kind of a bad text write much more believable or convincing material coming up here soon. So we got to update the way that we communicate about phishing to everyday folks so that they know what to look for.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Everyone should know that I use the Oxford comma. If you get an email from me and it doesn't have an Oxford comma, you know it's AI generated, you know it's a scammer. So that's my tell. And have
yeah, but see, ChatGPT is listening to this call right now, and it's going to know you got to use no, I'm joking, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah. That's how it happens. That's why a second method of communication is always valuable.
Yep.
Well, excellent. So we got a really interesting question from the chat. This individual actually saw that another person posted some monitors for sale online, and this individual was able to tell what company the person worked for, obviously because of the screenshots of the monitors, which you mentioned about. Right. And this person also obviously received the first and last name of the poster. So if you had someone's full name and the company that they worked for, what kind of steps would you do? What's your first thoughts if you were going to hack them to get more information? What can you do with those two pieces of information?
Yeah. Well, usually I don't need to find pictures of people's monitors to figure out where they work. I just simply find that on LinkedIn. So, I mean, yeah, it's not great, right? Especially if it has work information on the monitor and you're actually seeing like interactions that they have with other people. I would probably get in the middle of those trusted interactions. And let's say they had a chat up on that monitor in the background of the picture and they're talking to HR about a change to their address. I could kind of loop myself into that original conversation. The HR person's not going to think twice about it because that is a legit conversation that was had. And we assume those private conversations were legit originally and continue to be legit, committed and consistency, right? So yeah, I'd probably just get in the middle of a trusted interaction, just like I normally would, a la like BEC style, like business email compromise, which you don't actually need to compromise an email to do BEC. You just have to believably seem like a vendor or seem like a person internally. So that's probably what I would do.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. I will not be posting any photos of my computer. I never do. All right. So we got another question, and I think this is going to be of interest for everyone, specifically after hearing about your hacking abilities. So what tools can we use to help scrub personal identifiable information from the website? I think you mentioned a few earlier, but if we could get them renamed again after hearing your tactics, I think that would be welcome for the crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a paid option. There's a free option. So the free option is Google's takedown request. It's kind of obnoxious because you have to go through and request each item to be removed. And it's only removed from Google. It's not removed from the data brokerage site itself. And so you can still go to Rocket Reach and find the info. It's just not indexed on Google. But it's helpful to not be able to easily see it on Google because that's where we go first when we're attacking. The other option is paid, and that is Abine's Delete Me. It's amazing. I pay for it. I love it. Everybody should. They don't pay me to say this. I just honestly think it's a fantastic tool. They do a great job. They remove your information quarterly. Again, not sponsored content. Just if you find yourself annoyed trying to remove this information, just use that and take it down.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a wonderful suggestion. I will be looking that up myself. So we've talked about a lot of things, that we can do. Do you notice a common thread or patterns of people that don't get hacked, of people that are protected from hacks? Is there kind of any overall trends?
I'm going to first reiterate that anything and anyone is hackable. Anyone or anything that claims that it's unhackable is lying. Tom asked for me to spell that tool. Abine, A-B-I-N-E. Abines, delete me. Like delete and me. Anything and anyone is hackable. You will hear people, marketing teams out in the world, say that something is unhackable, that it's perfect software and can't be hacked. That doesn't exist. Anything that uses a computer, anything that is a human being, it can be hacked, it can be tricked, including people that write phishing attacks for a living. So it's important first, I think, to be honest with yourself, to realize that anything is hackable, and to make sure that you don't consider yourself to be perfect. And then from there, assume a level of breach. So assume that you are already hacked. How can you make it more obnoxious for the attacker? Not reusing your passwords, making sure that you use multi-factor authentication, segmenting your work and personal life on different machines, keeping those machines up to date. There are so many interesting things that you can do to make that process hard for an attacker who's attempting to pivot throughout your organization or your personal life. So no, nothing's unhackable. Assume everything that can be hacked. If anyone tells you that they're unhackable or their software is unhackable, you don't believe them.
Yes, send them your way is what you're saying. Excellent. Well, speaking of ways to help avoid some of these attacks, do you suggest using SSO or even openID, like sign on with Google, over having just a long, strong, unique password? Do we need both? Is one better than the other? What's right?
It depends on your threat model, which is what you're going to hear any practitioner say. So let's think about some examples of your threat model. Let's say you're the type of person who knows yourself and you know that you don't keep your Google Chrome up to date. So you see it turn red in the corner and you're thinking to yourself that you don't really do that. Well, if you're going to use a Chrome-based tool to sign in everywhere or to store your passwords, well, suddenly that tool is less safe because you're not keeping the software up to date. So whatever you use, you need to keep up to date. That thing has to be secured with a long, random, and unique password and multi-factor authentication. If you can meet that criteria, that thing can probably be used as long as it is a legit thing that stays up to date and has great encryption involved within it. So every tool is different. I can't just kind of blanket say what can or can't be used, but those are some ways to think about your threat model and how you can use something.
Thank you. Excellent. That's very helpful.
Yeah.
So we've talked about kind of our own security and what we can do, but of course, security in a business relies on everyone. So we got a comment. Sometimes it's hard to manage employees and friends from leaking info because we can't watch over them all the time. So what suggestions can you provide to help increase security of others so that we are all secure?
Oh, this is a hard one because you can't control anyone's behavior but your own. You can make it known what you feel about these things, right? I'll tell my friends, hey, we're in this location. Please don't post my location while I'm there. Once I leave, it's okay to say that we were at the beach and which beach it was, right? But just don't say it while we're there drinking the margarita. That doesn't make me feel comfortable. While you're on vacation, if you're with a group of people, say, hey, we can post the sunset picture, but let's not geotag the exact hotel that we're staying at, so that someone can't pretend to be us and change our reservation or just mess with us and do horrible, stupid things, right? So there are like levels to it where we don't have to just say to people, I'm not comfortable with the internet. You can just say, hey, while we're on vacation, let's not post about it while we're there. Let's not geotag. Let's talk about it when we come home, and we can stick to the sunsets and margarita pictures as opposed to our exact location and exactly where we spent our money to lower the phishing risk a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. And kind of similarly, so of course there's habits that we should all engage in to be more secure. In a remote environment, what can an individual do to try to help increase security at the device level? So how do we increase security on everyone's individual devices when they're so spread out?
Right. You can manage the software even if it's remote. So use a tool within your organization. Many organizations have this to ensure that you have a managed solution on that laptop or that desktop at home, and it knows, hey, this Chrome browser hasn't been updated in a year. That doesn't make any sense. Make sure you do that. And at a point, you can set that based on what your threat model is for your company and what you choose to say, listen, you can't access this tool if you don't keep it up to date. So this Chrome browser that you'd like to use is now 2 weeks out of date, and now you need to update it if you'd like to continue doing your work using that tool. So it's important to set people up for success and not just tell them what to do, but ensure that they can be successful in doing it. Set them up with automatic updates for their software so they don't need to sit down and think to do it. Make sure that they have a managed solution so that they know the importance of keeping it up to date and they understand the why behind it, because you haven't just spoken at them, you've told them the why through their training. Hey, this is why it's so important to stay safe in this way, because we don't want your personal emails, your photos from that work trip we took. We don't want that on the internet. So let's really talk about the importance of staying safe here and why it's so important and why we have an elevated threat model.
Yeah, excellent. Such good suggestions. I know that we're almost out of time here. I have one final question for you. We've heard so much about the hacking that you have done. Rachel, I would love to hear, when was the first time someone tried to hack you? What was it like?
I actually remember it. Neopets era. I had all those paintbrushes. If you're a Neopets kid, you know what I'm talking about.
Raise your hand.
Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. Neopets, historically, one of the most pwned organizations in the world, unfortunately. And we all just used the silliest passwords, right? We had no idea about password security when we were children. That's why I always talk about the importance of teaching children the importance of their passwords and how to keep them separate. And here's how to use a password manager and installing it for them and making sure they understand it. Because as kids, we didn't know anything about this. Reusing that password everywhere, and they got pwned over and over again. And I had so many cool things built up that they stole from me. And now that's the kids that are on Roblox or any other fun game. So making sure that we protect the things that are important in children's lives and keep them safe with the same level of security that we expect as adults is something that I think is really cool for their autonomy and just respecting them in general.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. And also, I have also was hacked as a Neopets kid. So there's lots of us out there. Maybe we start a support group. It's
Neopet support. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not the only one.
We need that.
Yeah. So Rachel, thank you so much for sharing some insights today with us. It's been so informative and it's been so wonderful. And thank you to everyone who watched this webcast, who learned a little bit about hacking, maybe a little bit about how they might be more vulnerable than they'd like to be. And thank you to everyone that submitted questions. It was great to have those come in. Great to get some answers live. That's all we got. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for attending.
Thanks, everybody. See you on the internet. My name as listed here on all of the sites.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.